millions of Americans now hypertensive based on new guidelines. U.S. health experts tightened the guidelines for high blood pressure for the first time in 14 years, classifying 30 million more Americans as hypertensive. High blood pressure was once defined as a reading of 140/90, but has recently been lowered to 130/80. Blood pressure refers to the force of blood flowing through the blood vessels. When too high, it can damage arterial tissues and increase the risk for heart disease, stroke, and kidney problems. Under the old guidelines, 32% of U.S. adults had high blood pressure. With the new lower threshold, 46%, or 103 million Americans, are now considered hypertensive. Normal levels are pegged at less than 120/80, and lifestyle changes are recommended for those with elevated BP. Medication is given to patients with stage 1 hypertension who are at risk, while those at stage 2 are given 2 different classes of medicine. Since hypertension is a silent killer, experts want to help people get the condition under control earlier and place a strong emphasis on making healthier life choices. Trying to be healthier? Might want to watch out for these things too.
Death by caffeine. A South Carolina teen is dead after a combo of caffeinated drinks triggered a fatal heart issue in his normally healthy heart. Davis Allen Kripe collapsed in class on April 26th and died just an hour later. The 16-year-old had consumed multiple caffeinated drinks that day and died from a caffeine-induced cardiac event, otherwise known as abnormal heart rhythm. A healthy adult can safely ingest as much as 400 milligrams of caffeine daily, equivalent to either 4 cups of coffee, 10 colas, or 3 to 5 energy drinks. But for teens, the recommended daily intake is only 100 milligrams. That's a cup of coffee, 3 colas, or 1 energy drink. Caffeine prompts the release of the stress hormone norepinephrine, too much of which can cause rapid or irregular heart rate. Not enough blood is pumped into the body as a result, thus damaging or shutting down the brain and other organs. People who have died from caffeine overdoses also experienced seizures, with some reportedly choking on their own vomit. Caffeine does have certain benefits, and the vast majority consume it with no negative effects. But experts warn it should be taken in moderation, especially for kids and adolescents. Sitting is the new smoking. Health experts have long warned against the perils of sitting all day, but a new study suggests the length of time spent inactive in between bouts of movement also matters. Hip-mounted accelerometers measured physical inactivity in nearly 8,000 Americans aged 45 years and older and found that they were sedentary for 12.3 hours out of a 16-hour waking day. When measuring bout length, it was discovered that subjects who sat for longer periods at a time were more likely to have died at the end of the study period than those with shorter sitting spells. Findings indicate that moving around for every 30 consecutive minutes of inactivity may significantly decrease the risk for death. The study did not explain how sitting increases early death, but experts suggest inactivity exposes the body to higher blood glucose levels, which leads to problems like diabetes, heart disease, or stroke. Prolonged sitting may also weaken the abdominal muscles, hip flexors, and glutes. It could also lead to a lack of circulation in the legs, potentially resulting in blood clots forming in the veins, a condition known as deep vein thrombosis. Alas, working out after a long day of sitting in an office chair may not necessarily undo all its ill effects. The best way to lengthen your lifespan, it seems, is to move about as often as you can. Pollution can stress you out, too. New research from China may explain the connection between air pollution and heart disease, stroke, and an increased chance of death. A study from China's Fudan University says that long-term exposure to air pollution can boost stress levels, alter metabolism, and increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Scientists placed 55 students in 2 groups with functioning and malfunctioning air purifiers inside student dormitories in Shanghai. They observed them for over 12 days before swapping the purifiers, then tracked the students for another 9 days. Students exposed to dirtier air had increased stress hormones, blood sugar, high blood pressure, poor response to insulin, and other ailments. All of these can result in cardiovascular disease, stroke, and diabetes. Students in the group with cleaner air, which meant exposure to only half the amount of pollution, were all found to have had a reduction in stress levels. It's worth pointing out that Fudan University is one of the most prestigious and, as a result, uber-selective state schools in China. And only something like 0.2% of the millions of prospective university students get in each year. And that's after working through a vexing state education system and before putting in the actual university work. Point being, it might not just be the air that's affected the students' stress levels. You might want to lay off the coconut oil. Health food enthusiasts and hipsters have long sworn by the many benefits of coconut oil. But according to the American Heart Association, it may not actually be all that good for you. Coconut oil, unlike most plant oils, is highly saturated. Its saturated fat content is 82%, higher than butter, beef fat, and pork lard. Saturated fat has been linked to low-density lipoprotein, which is bad cholesterol that can build up in the arteries and increase the risk of heart disease. The American Heart Association recommends eating less saturated fat, replacing them instead with unsaturated plant oils, nuts, and seeds. Still, coconut oil has been known to raise good cholesterol levels. And while the evidence doesn't say increased consumption leads directly to heart disease, the fact remains that it contains plenty of saturated fat. So as with all things, it may best be taken in moderation. Frank Sachs was the lead author of the report debunking the idea that coconut oil is a health food. While speaking to USA Today, his advice was, you can put it on your body, but don't put it in your body.